So, good evening everybody, my name is Jason, and I have the honor here to present to you all today for our 5 o'clock Les Rendezvous de Prix de Lausanne. Somebody very special here, who I'm sure his name is known to many of you, and I'd like to present Cunxin. And we have some time here today. I hope it's okay for everybody to do it in English, if that's okay. If there's any questions in French, please ask. And I will be here, and also Nicola is here to take all of your questions as well. And I would like to then give the floor to Lee to tell us a bit more about himself and his life in dance.
Thank you, Jason, for your nice introduction. Now, I have to apologize to you. I only speak English and Chinese, so no other languages. But what I thought I'll do is I will probably speak for about 20 or 25 minutes, and then I'll leave some time for you to ask me questions. And I've guaranteed that somebody can translate from French to English, so you're safe to ask any questions in French later on. I would just like to say, looking back at my life, I should never meant to be a dancer. I should never have really lived until now. The reason I say that was I was born into a time which was extremely difficult and challenging in China. I was born in the year 1961, and I was the sixth of 7 peasant sons. Now, when I was growing up, we had no running water, so we had to really walk a long way to carrying buckets of water home from the wells back. So every day we were carrying buckets of water back and forth. And we had virtually no heating inside. And the temperature in my hometown could get down to between around 15 to 18 degrees below zero at winter time. But there's no heating. So it's often actually inside was colder than outside. So as a child in the countryside, we often just were so freezing inside, we ran outside and ran wild. And often until about age 9, we didn't wear much clothes. So we'll be running sometimes nude, particularly in the summertime. Mainly because I was the 6th of the 7 sons, so I always wore pass-me-down clothes from my older brothers. So a lot of the clothes, by the time they get down to me, was already thickly patched up layer upon layer by my mother. So they look horrible and very uncomfortable to actually wear. But the worst memory of my life, when I'm looking back, was really the starvation I remembered. So many meal times, my poor mother, with utter desperation, tried to scrape together whatever there is for her to cook for her 7 sons for dinner that night. Often, there's very little for her to cook with. Sometimes, she was so desperate she had to knock doors, neighbors' doors, to borrowing food to get us by. But even then, when food finally arrived, the 7 pair of hungry eyes, already desperate for food. But when food presented by my mother, and she was a wonderful cook, but by only look at how much there is, we knew there's never going to be enough for us to eat. But the Chinese tradition was you have to wait for your elderly to start eating before you can pick up your chopsticks to eat the food. So we would always wait for our parents to start. But our parents often says, we're not hungry, you go ahead and eat then. Because by not eating, they hope their children will have extra mouthful of food to eat. So that was pretty much my childhood. Around the time I was born, there were tens of millions of the Chinese people died of starvation. So it was really a difficult time. Imagine 7 boys in a peasant family, and the chance of us surviving was really very, very remote. And for my parents, they really dreamed for their children to have a better life than theirs. For me, I always really wished there's one day I couldn't make enough money, perhaps to help my parents to live a better life. And even just simply as a child, I wished that I could, just because of me, my mother could have an extra mouthful of food to eat, or had a beautiful dinner for to eat that night, would be a wonderful thing as a son. So as a child, all we had, there's not much else, but we had big dreams. I always really dreamed of a better life, or dreamed of getting out of that peasant life, which my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents always have been. One day, this amazing chance happened. I still remember this morning so vividly. It snowed very hard the night before, and the next day it was still snowing. And the snow piled up, covered all the ground, and it was whirling wind was so strong. When there's a chill factor with strong wind, you feel, we were wearing these thick cotton quilted cotton pants our parents had made for us. With that, we looked like these round snowballs. And that morning, we were studying in this little classroom. Our little classroom is a simple Chinese commune house. If you have seen one, it's very simple, made out of brick and mud and stones. But that particular little room, it was so simply built, and when it rains, actually leaked. So when the snow started to melt, and you start dripping inside of the room, and it was still very cold inside. Like I said before, often the inside is colder than the outside. And we all sitting there shivering. It was so freezing. What was supposed to keep us warm was our teacher told us to read this "We Love You, Chairman Mao" text 10 times in a row. You can well imagine just how heartwarming that was by reading that. But our generation went through the most unbelievable brainwash. We were virtually born taught to read this kind of text. You don't have a Harry Potter of the world to read as a child, and only really a lot of Mao's, in political literature, but also sing "We Love You, Chairman Mao" songs throughout our lives. So in the middle of that reading that day, 4 men suddenly led into our classroom. They were introduced to us as Madame Mao's cultural advisors from the Beijing Dance Academy, and they were there to select talents to study ballet. Of course, we knew almost nothing about ballet. The only time I ever watched ballet was in a little traveling film crew. They set these temporary put 2 big wooden posts, and they put like a white sheet over it. That was the screen. And this traveling little camera, they still had that real camera going in the open square. And as a child, I was fascinated. So we would sleep there all overnight to occupy our little spot so we could watch a movie. Now, one of the movies I watched was The Red Detachment of a Woman, which is one of the Chinese model ballets. And that was the only time I ever watched a ballet. And as a child, I had this nightmare of ballet. I always thought maybe man was also standing on point. And so when they said these are the people selecting people studying ballet, that's the only image I thought, my God, do they have to make me wear the point shoes? And I relate to my grandmother's bound feet, because the Chinese old women, they always had these bound feet. So her feet were so small, all the 5 toes, because they were born from a child, all their 5 toes were virtually grown together. So I thought, my God, my feet would look like that when I get older. So I was petrified. And then these 4 men sort of walk along, ask all to stand up to sing "We Love You, Chairman Mao" songs. As we were singing, they walk along the aisles and trying to get an idea of our physical body shape through our snowball-like clothes. So at first they passed me by without taking any notice. Out of the 40 old kids in the room that day, they selected one girl. Just as when they were about to leave that girl out the door, my class teacher hesitated And for some reason, suddenly tap on the shoulder of the very, very last gentleman before that man from Beijing was about to walk out. She said to him, "Excuse me, sir, what about that one?" And she was pointing at me. Now, you know, all these years, I never thought to ask this teacher why did she point at me. Only when I sat down to write my autobiography, about, let me think now, that's about nearly 15 years ago, so then that was the first time I thought, if it wasn't for that teacher, I would never have been plucked out of that country life, went to study ballet. So it was truly a turning point in my life. And I want to find out why did that teacher ever single me out that day. Eventually I tracked her down because with New China now, a lot of people have been moving around. So finally I tracked her down and she happened to have a phone in her house. So I said, "Teacher son, could you please tell me why did you single me out that day?" And she thought about it. And then she said, "Lee, to tell you the truth, for all these years I wondered, I still don't know." It just, to me, it just shows you that in life, often, things happen for virtually reasons beyond explanation. You really don't know why it happened. And I just really, truly believe that maybe, perhaps, somebody up there was looking over me. Maybe some of my secret wishes I made as a child came true. I don't know. I still don't know. Because that teacher certainly would not be able to explain to me any other way. Then, that day, we went into the head of school's office. There were 10 of us selected across school between the age of 8 to 12. We all lined up in front of these 4 people. One person shouted out, says "Take all your clothes off, except your underwear." But not many people moved. We were all sitting there. And it wasn't because it was cold outside. We did not want to take our clothes off. It was because not many of us at that time could afford to wear a pair of underwears. So we were so poor, like that poor, and as a sixth in my family, we really did not, I never worn a pair of underwear up that stage of my life. And then it's gradually, virtually lift our legs up, and one person held your knees straight, the other person forced up. So they try to test every part of your body, try to test your flexibility. They measure the distances, the proportion of your body. So they went through this incredible, really audition process. They went through that county level, the county, the city, the provincial level. So from quite a few provinces, they ended up selecting just over 40 kids that year. And I was one of the 40. So just turned 11, I went on the train for 24 hours, traveled to Beijing to study ballet. Of course, at that time, for me, it was just a godsend opportunity. That for my parents, they thought at least one of their sons had the opportunity to do something different, perhaps make it in life. And for me, also means there's enough food to eat from that moment onwards. So at least you have enough good food to eat. So I spent 7 years at the Beijing Dance Academy. And some of the years we went home twice to visit our families, and some years we went back once. And the training at the Beijing Dance Academy was incredible. It was incredibly disciplined and was fantastic. It was based on Wagner training. The teachers there were really dedicated. They were passionate about what they were teaching. And there was a sense of belief, because before we were selected we went to Beijing Dance Academy in 1972. The Beijing Dance Academy was shut for quite a few years during the Cultural Revolution. So we were the first year being called back. So some of the teachers were called back from different areas, because they were all being splattered during the Cultural Revolution because the academy was closed. And so they were really determined to teach a whole new generation of dancers. And we started from 5:30 in the morning, and we virtually practiced. We We ran around the lake, we did Chinese folk dance, we kicked our legs high in the air, we practiced butterflies and the kung fu flying legs, and then we went to have breakfast around 7:15. And then 8 o'clock we started our training. So we all the way to about 12 o'clock, and then we have a short siesta, then we go to about 6 o'clock at night. After that we do political studies until about 9 o'clock. So basically about 6 days a week we trained. And we did martial arts, we did acrobatics, we did Chinese folk dance, we did Palucca, we did karate dance, we learned a bit of music, and we obviously continued our normal education with history and all that. It was a fantastic time. But what was interesting was the first 2 years, I absolutely hated ballet. I did not like ballet at all. I didn't know what ballet was. And I found it all agony, no fun. And I was, the whole time, when I went home to visit my family at the end of the year, I was so ashamed of myself because my grades, my score was so low. And by the end of the second year, I was convinced that I was going to be let go. And I just dreading to face my parents and seeing their disappointed faces, seeing how terribly I've done. Until one year, virtually I went back, one of my brothers said to me, Lee, how lucky you are, how we all your brothers, would love to be in your position. And he used a simple fable, trying to convince me that I had a better life, I had better opportunities. And then after that, I really thought about what he said. On the way back, I thought to myself, I better start pulling my fingers out. I better start to work hard, because my life back home would be really dead end for me. So from that, really, I had a new ballet teacher too, and he really paid some special attention to me. He sort of believed in something I could do better. And gradually I improved with a little bit of hard work. And eventually, it wasn't even love at the beginning, eventually that allowed me to push myself harder. It's really the sense that I felt I was good at something. I felt good by being able to achieve something physically. And be able to feeling good that you're looking back at your journey, so with extra hard work equals success, equals that you actually done better than what you thought you were capable of doing. So gradually, I just gained momentum, little by little I chip it away. And one day I realized I really love this art form. It wasn't just a chore. It wasn't just because I did it for something else. It made me feel good. And that was really the turning point when I realized I'd rather do ballet than anything else in life. And that was the time I was willing to work harder and put longer hours in. I didn't really have a natural jump. And I also, when I started spinning, I felt terribly sick because I experienced this most horrific motion sickness. When I first went to Beijing, I can't get on the bus without feeling I want to throw my guts out. So before I started spinning, I felt I was feeling really sick in my stomach. But I thought I have to conquer that. So the mornings before 5:30, I would get myself up, sneak away, and I either strap heavy sandbags on both my ankles, hop one leg up and down on 4 levels of stairs. I hopped like that for a couple of years, trying to build up my muscle strength. Or I was spinning. I would start turning. And so eventually I gradually conquered my motion sickness. And I was such a stupid extreme. I would, at night time, sometimes I would light a little candle because my teacher said if you can spot properly, you can turn properly. So I would spot, with a dark studio, I would spot with a little candlelight. And it is horribly difficult when you can only see a little light, so you really have to spot. But eventually I really conquered that sickness, and my pirouettes started to improve. And my jumps started to improve too, from this wearing these extra weights. We didn't have Pilates machines, nothing at that time. So the best I could think of was the sandbags. So eventually I graduated as one of the top students at the Beijing Dance Academy in 1979, 7 years later. The same year, America sent their first cultural delegation to China and Nixon. In that group, there's a dance representative, which happened to be Ben Stevenson, who was the artistic director of the Houston Ballet at the time, and he was a former principal dancer with the Royal Ballet. And he was wonderful. He taught 2 master classes at the Beijing Dance Academy, and offered 2 scholarships to study in America. But under the Mao's new China, there never have been any dance students ever being sent out of China on an exchange program. So we were the first 2 students to go. And I was one of them, another student called Zhang Weichang. So we went with very little English. We actually had 2 days worth of English tutoring. And one of my best teachers was actually a Chinese dictionary, Chinese and English dictionary. Was small, so you can carry that little dictionary in the pocket. And I learned, even when I sit on the toilet, I try to learn some new words. Eventually, I discovered these 2 very useful words, English expressions. I thought to myself, these will become highly useful when I get there. One of them was, oh dear me. So I didn't realize how old-fashioned this little thing was. So we went to America, and it was such an eye-opening experience. I never could have really dreamed of seeing that kind of experiences that people really felt they can do anything they wanted to in their lives. That was really foreign to me because, in my life in China, really where you were assigned, where you were born, you were pretty much going to stay there for the rest of your life. You were assigned one job, you're going to be staying with that job for the rest of your life as well. So to go to America, Ben Stevenson was really kind to us. And he choreographed the first piece on Zhang Weichang and I, the 2 Chinese boys, had a really good technique. We could do beautiful double tours, we could do wonderful pirouettes and all that. But we couldn't walk properly. So we all walking like that every time. And then Ben Stevenson chose this piece of music called Gershwin music, Rhapsody in Blue, which is very jazzy and all that. And we were dancing like, classical music. And at one point, shaking us, he said, no, I don't want you to point your feet when you walk. But it was so unnatural. What I didn't realize was dancing is not just about technical skills and all that. Very quickly I realized it's all about music. It's all about interpretation of music, what the music tells you. And such an incredible mind-opening experience. And that made me want to stay in America. So eventually I stayed in America, which caused a big political storm, which I don't want to go into details. But after I stayed in America, I had this incredible career. I never dreamed I could have worked with people like Kenneth Macmillan, Glenn Ketley, Christopher Bruce, Yuri Killian, etc. And coached by people like Margot Fontaine, for example, was just unbelievable. And so we got to dance incredible variety of repertoire, not only the classicals, but also a variety of contemporaries. So I feel truly blessed looking back. And where you could have dinner with these kind of people and ask them questions, about a certain role, what do they want, is incredible. I think it's quite, a special time, I think, looking back. And then after dancing 16 years at the Houston Ballet as a principal and a soloist, then eventually I, during one of my guest performance experiences to London, I met this wonderful ballerina called Mary McKendry, and she was a principal dancer at the London Festival Ballet at the time. Now it's called International Ballet. And eventually Ben Stevenson invited her to replace one of the injured ballerinas as my dance partner. So we eventually danced together and fell in love in real life, not just on stage. And she happened to be an Australian-born dancer. And it's because of her connection, eventually I went to Australia to dance my final 3.5 years as a principal dancer with the Australian Ballet. Once I finished my dance in Korea, I thought, well, I'm going to leave ballet behind because I have 3 young children. I was also helped my parents and 6 brothers in China to help them to get along financially. So I thought I have to use my brain to do something completely different. So I made a career transition from dance into finances. So I eventually became a senior manager in one of the largest stockbroking firms in Australia. So I did that for over 10 years. And then just last year, I was approached to apply for the Queensland Ballet directorship job. And I hesitated. I thought I worked so hard, made that career transition work. You know, I was doing very successfully financially. And I set my family up in China very well. And I had given my children the best possible education. And I was involved on the board of the Australian Ballet, helped them try to raise money, become the chairman of their foundation. By the time I left, I helped them, in virtue of that foundation, raise about $35 million. But in my heart, when that calling came, I always felt, even when I left ballet, went into finances, I truly felt there's an unfinished dream. Something allows you to roll up your sleeve and really get your hand dirty, do something truly meaningful. And that was quite simple, was really be able to get closer to the dancers, to really be able to pass on my experiences to the younger generation. And to be able to help them to realize their potential in life. So eventually I threw my hat in the ring and I was offered the job. So actually, before I came here, it was only the first week back in Queensland Ballet. I have to say, I was so excited, I can't wait to get back. There are a lot of new dancers came on board and I had a huge ambition. I'd like to greatly expand the company, both financially and in numbers and in the facility. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's really my story. I'd like to just leave you with this few finishing remarks, and then I'll open for questions. If I have to look back in my life, through the trials and tribulations, at times experience these incredibly shattered dream moments, I have to try and find the strength from within to overcome them, or to pick up the shattered dreams to go on achieving my next dream. Through this kind of times, if I have to pinpoint 1, 2, or 3 things that worked for me, or made me wake up in the morning, wants to smile, no matter how disappointed I was the night before, or if it was freezing outside or raining, you wake up, you smile and say, isn't that beautiful day? Those are the ingredients I would say to you. Is at the darkest point of my life, I never gave up. I never lost hope. And I always held on to this self-belief. If I work hard, if I open my mind, and if my heart is in the right place, everything will be okay. That's the first thing. Second thing is, whatever I did, I really want to be the best. Mediocrity was never good enough. I did not want to die at the end of my life thinking I could have done better. I did not want to die with that regret. And the third thing I would like to say is, when things get tough in my life, when it seems I have banged against a brick wall, I always lower my head and work even harder. I truly believed that difficulties, hurdles, tend to give way to the most determined person, the person who worked the hardest will reap the most reward at the end of the day. Doesn't matter how much talent you have, without working hard, without working harder than most, you can't possibly achieve your best. You can't possibly be successful at the end of the day. So that's really the simple messages I live by myself and for myself. I don't know whether it will be any use to you, but I do hope each one of you have a great success in your own lives. Thank you very much. Could I just impart one advice to the people who are competing, who are in the competition here? Whatever is maybe worth to you or not worth to you, but I would say this. I have done 3 international ballet competitions. And my experience coming away from it is you never go in with thinking you are going to win. Don't. If you have that notion in mind, it's a wrong notion, wrong aim to go into these competitions. When you go into these competitions, you want to have this learning attitude. You want to learn from the choreographers, the coaches, the teachers, and the fellow competitors. If you are going with you want to learn from others, you're going to have fun. You're going to walk away with valuable information, with valuable knowledge. You're going to make you become a better dancer at the end. And don't walk away rejected no matter what happened. Because I no doubt in my mind, as long as you walk away learning one thing from this competition, then you have gained incredible, very valuable things in your career. Okay, now, questions. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Yes?
First, I have to say that it was just an unbelievably inspiring story. But you said you had or you implied you had quite a rigid training, very, very strict. And one sees around the world people from those trainings who never lose it. They never have that experience that you described about discovering how important the music is and learning that there are other things. Do you think that was part of your talent, that you were able to learn that, or was that something that Ben Stevenson, like the connection between you, how do you account for that change?
Yeah, I was always quite curious. I was always curious about everything else, not just about dancing. I was curious about paintings, I was curious about wine, I was curious about stock market, I was curious about movies. I always try to go beyond ballet. And I really think for you to become a good dancer, an overall artist, you really have an overall life experience to make you a better artist. Just being a brilliant dancer is not enough. I think a dancer truly of an international caliber is an artist at heart first. And only life experience, overall life experiences can give you that maturity, artistic maturity. Once you have that artistic maturity, then anything you do will be really satisfying. I mean, I did not really enter my prime until when I was 30. After I was 30, I really felt every role I did, I felt made sense. Before then, when I look back, when I did Down Q, Corsair, or Swan Lake, before I was 30, I was just very naive. I was very immature. I approached from a technical point of view, not artistic point of view. So eventually, and I was always so nervous. I could normally do better in the studio rehearsals than on the stage because I was so worried about technical things. Where once you forget about technical things, once you really worry about the role, the artistic side, and the music side, then the technical things actually happen. Because at the end of the day, I realized the technical things is you have done all the hard yard in the studio. You should, when you get on stage, you should perform better. The people who perform better is the people who have that relaxed mind, who have that really the key approaches, very simple approaches, before their mind get clogged on the stage. Once you think about too much on stage, it's normally really disaster.
Thank you for your very inspiring speech. I think most of us here have seen the movie Miles' Last Dancer. If you could clear up one misconception, the biggest misconception you think that movie made of your life, what would that misconception be?
Wow, okay. Let me first say, I think they have done a great job with my movie. The main thing is, obviously, I mean, doesn't have the depth of my book. My book is about 180,000 words. They're trying to suppress a 20-year life into virtually less than 2 hours. So, but the screenplay writer spent a year with me writing the screenplay. He's a really talented screenplay writer who wrote the film Shine about the pianist, which won the Academy Award for the Best Actor with Jeffrey Rush. And then the director, Bruce Beresford, did the movie Drive Miss Daisy and all that, some fabulous movies. So they both were really top caliber. And also, I think a lot of the China scenes, they really try to keep it as authentic, as true as possible. So they spent a lot of money. They hired some of the best producing people in China trying to help with making this film true. And the one question that people always ask me about the movie, was it true or not, was the very last scene. My wife and I went to visit my family. We danced on the street, on the Cunxin street. That scene was quite true. And I still have the video footage when we danced. When I first went back to China, well, I took my wife back to China, the peasants asked, because a lot of them had never seen dance before. They said, could you do a few moves for us? So we did these licks and all that, and they all clapped and all that. It was just, quite special. When I spent some time with the director, he went through the screenplay, and he said, Lee, look, the movie is going to work very nicely. And he said the story, has sort of timelessness. Even though it happened in the 1970s, but still very relevant. But he said, unless we have the right people play you, then we don't have a movie. I said, what do you mean? He said, I want to find this perfect dancer who can act, who can speak Chinese and English, and who can also dance well. And he has to be nice looking. And I said to him, can't you, if we don't find that person, can't you get people like, Jet Li or, sort of Jackie Chan or somebody like that. And then you have a double, have a dancer in the back. He said, no, that won't happen anymore. When I thought about it, I thought, well, there is this wonderful dancer who is the principal dancer at the Birmingham Royal Ballet called Chi Tao. And actually, his father was one of my former teachers at the Beijing Dance Academy. And he subsequently became the head of the Beijing Dance Academy later on after I've left. And I saw him dance when I went to England, because since my book was published, I've been invited to do a lot of motivational speaking. I went to speak in a big conference in London. And I want to see Chi, so I went to visit him. That was before Bruce Beresford asked me about it. I said, yes, I do know this wonderful dancer, but I said, I don't know whether he can act. He said, well, Lee, I've taught a lot of people who can't act to act. He said, unless he's totally stupid, I think I can teach him how to act. But as you know, he's actually done very well for never acted in a movie. I'm very happy with it.
Sorry, I have one question.
Okay.
In the movie, there is a scene where your teacher gives you a video,
yes,
and then you can watch Baryshnikov and all this.
Yeah.
And then, if I remember, then they discovered that, so your teacher had to leave the school.
Yeah, no, that's not
correct.
quite correct. because there are so many facts they have to compress together. That teacher was actually a combination of 3 different teachers, so not just one. So three different teachers' experience they put into that one central character. But the video he gave me is actually some of the video taken over from a Chinese teacher lived in Japan, who brought some of the videos when China first opened up, brought them to us as a gift, and so we were allowed to watch them for the first time when I was just before my graduation, about a couple of years before my graduation. One of the movies inspired me so much was The Turning Point. And then it was Baryshnikov's production of The Nutcracker for ABT with Garci Kirkland. And it was incredible. For several nights, I just absolutely dreamed about it, and I woke up, I was so inspired and motivated to work harder. You know, he was always my role model, really.
And was this, have you seen this teacher again a lot or not so?
Yeah, actually, when I go back to Beijing, I'll always see him.
Thank you.
He's a quite special teacher.
I have one question. In the movie, we can see 3 dancers. Actually, the youngest one is now in sixth grade, and the older one, Guo Chengwu, is now with the National Ballet of Australia, and Cao Chi, as you said, with Birmingham. And 3 of them represent, including you, 4 of you represent the 4 generations of Chinese dancers. And I guess you have some connections and you have met each other before. So I just want to know your opinions on those 3 dancers and their performances, as well as your opinions on Chinese, the development of Chinese ballet in all these years, starting from you to the youngest one, not graduated yet.
Right. Okay. I think that the Beijing Dance Academy is still, I have such high regard for the academy. I think that probably the understanding of teaching these days is a lot more sophisticated. They have much better facilities now, a lot more studios in a new facility. But honestly, I think the training, somehow is not as detailed as I would like. I think it's not as disciplined as I would like. Even when I go back to Beijing sometimes, I'll be asked to teach a class sometimes. I feel there's a lack of discipline now. And once, quite a few years ago, I went back and I was watching a class, and one of the mobile phone rang, and many of them rushed to their dance bags looking for their mobile phone, which means there's not everybody thought that was their own mobile phone was ringing. So if I was a teacher, I would throw them out, because that kind of, really lacking respect for the art form. And I really can't. As a director now, I won't tolerate, because you have to have that respect for the art form. And so to answer your question, I think the middle Lee, he's now a rising star at the Australian Ballet, and I was trying to mentor him along the way, and he went through a bit of a tough time because a couple of instances he lacked discipline there, and the director basically just did not use him, so he nearly lost it. But he was so talented. He's not mature about that hard. Incredible. Everything he does at ease. But I said, you could be another Baryshnikov if you wanted to be. But you have to really work hard. You have to want it up here. Because physically, it's not a problem. I think we all know it. Just natural talent is not good enough. You really have to be hungry. You really have to be willing to work hard for that to happen, for your career to go somewhere. So I, in some ways, I hope that a great training institution like the Beijing Dance Academy, which they got a nation of over 1 billion talents to draw on, I wish that they will continue to going to insert that incredible discipline, because the training, the basic training, the training syllabus is brilliant. Over the years, they have really tried to learn from the Danish training for the, try to keep the good part of the Russian training. So I think they have produced some really good dancers, but it's very uneven. Some years you see them coming, depends on the teacher. I think in some ways you almost, in China, if I was the head of the Beijing Dance Academy, I almost need to have a really good teacher's course to really produce good teachers. And over the years, a lot of good Chinese teachers actually left for the West. So there's better lacking at the moment, I think. It's not a criticism, but it's just a personal opinion.
All right. Well, then I'm afraid I know we could continue for much longer, but we've gone double our planned time length. But I would just like to say, of course, anybody here who has yet to see or to read, here in the foyer we have the book and the DVD. The book is for 20 Swiss francs and the DVD is for 10 Swiss francs. And I believe they would be very happy to sign copies for you as well. So I think from all of us here at the Prix de Lausanne, huge thank you very much to Lee for this evening.